graders. I'm excited to start reading our new read aloud book today. We're going to be reading the book called The Invention of Hugo Cabret, and this book is written and illustrated by a very talented author and illustrator named Brian Selznick. This is a really fun book, and it's kind of like a cool mystery that takes us on a real twisting, turning plot where just when you think you have things figured out, there's a new twist. It's a fun read. At first glance, the book is a little intimidating. It's really big. But what's really unique about this book is the book is told partly in pictures, but also in words. So it's actually a quicker read than it looks at first glance. So without further ado, we will get started on the book called The Invention of Hugo Cabret. Make sure that you're listening, but also make sure that you're prepared to watch the screen because the pictures in this book also tell the story. Okay, it begins with a brief introduction. The story I am about to share with you takes place in 1931 under the roofs of Paris. Here you will meet a boy named Hugo Cabret, who once, long ago, discovered a mysterious drawing that changed his life forever. But before you turn the page, I want you to picture yourself sitting in the darkness, like the beginning of a movie. On screen, the sun will soon rise, and you will find yourself zooming toward a train station in the middle of the city. You will rush through the doors into a crowded lobby. You will eventually spot a boy amid the crowd, and he will start to move through the train station. Follow him, because this is Hugo Cabret. His head is full of secrets, and he's waiting for his story to begin. And that is signed by Professor H. Elakafabis. All right, so this is part one. The book has two parts, so we'll obviously begin with part one. Chapter 1, The Thief. Okay, so pay attention to the pictures here. I mentioned that this book takes place in Paris, and I can see the Eiffel Tower. It also mentioned this book takes place in 1931, so I'm thinking about the technology of the time, right? So there were cars, but we're talking older style cars. The book takes place in a train station. Trains would have been a big way of a major form of transportation at the time. Notice this kind of hue or halo around this boy. That's Hugo Cabret. So we're following Hugo. There's the train station. Oh, interesting. He's going into a vent of some kind. Another character of some kind. It's kind of cool how detailed these drawings are just for being pencil drawings. Okay, so Hugo is looking out through the clock down at this man. All right, from his perch behind the clock, Hugo could see everything. He rubbed his fingers nervously against the small notebook in his pocket and told himself to be patient. The old man in the toy booth was arguing with the girl. She was about Hugo's age, and he often saw her go into the booth with a book under her arm and disappear behind the counter. The old man looked agitated today. Had he figured out some of his toys were missing? Well, there was nothing to be done about that now. Hugo needed the toys. The old man and the girl argued some more, and finally she closed her book and ran off. So there's the girl. Thankfully, within moments, the old man had crossed his arms in front of him and closed his eyes. Hugo crept through the walls, came out through an air vent, and hurried down the hall until he reached the toy booth. Nervously, he rubbed the notebook one last time, then cautiously lowered his hand around the wind-up toy he wanted. But suddenly, there was a movement from inside the booth, and the sleeping old man sprang to life. Before Hugo could run, the old man grabbed his arm. The little blue wind-up mouse Hugo had taken fell from his hand, skidded across the counter, and landed on the floor with a crack. "Thief! Thief!" the old man yelled down the empty hallway. "Someone call the station inspector!" At the mention of the station inspector, Hugo panicked. He twisted and tried to get away, but the old man pulled hard on his arm and he wouldn't let go. "I finally caught you. Now empty your pockets." Hugo growled like a dog. He was furious with himself for being caught. The old man squeezed squeezed tighter until Hugo was practically standing on his toes. "You're hurting me!" "Empty your pockets." Reluctantly, one by one, Hugo pulled out dozens of objects. Screws and nails and bits of metal, gears and crumpled playing cards, tiny pieces of clockworks, cogs and wheels. He pulled out a crushed box of matches and some small candles. "You have one more pocket to go," the old man said. "There's nothing in it." "Then turn it inside out." "I don't have anything of yours. Let me go." "Where's the station inspector?" the old man yelled down the hallway again. "Why is he never around when he is needed?" If the station inspector in his green uniform appeared at the end of the hallway, Hugo knew everything would be over. Now, really quick, I want to pause and think about the station inspector. He's been mentioned several times now. I don't know for certain, but I need to infer who this station inspector could be. Clearly, Hugo is very concerned about the station inspector coming. The old man is calling for him when there is a problem. It makes me think that this is some kind of a police officer or a security guard, but maybe somebody who is in charge of security in the train station, right? Station inspector. I'm going to continue to look for more clues of who the station inspector could be, but something to be thinking about. The boy struggled against the old man, but it was no use. Finally, his hand trembling, Hugo reached into his pocket and pulled out his small, battered cardboard notebook. The cover had been rubbed smooth. Still holding on to the boy's arm, the old man snatched the notebook away, set it down out of Hugo's reach, opened it, and flipped through the pages. One page caught the old man's eye. Interesting. "Give that back to me! It's mine!" cried Hugo. "Ghosts," the old man muttered to himself. "I knew they would find me here eventually." He closed the notebook. The expression on his face changed rapidly from fear to sadness to anger. "Who are you, boy? Did you draw these pictures?" Hugo didn't answer him. "I said, did you draw these pictures?" Hugo growled again and spit on the floor. "Who did you steal this notebook from?" "I didn't steal it." The old man grunted, and with a push, he finally let go of Hugo's arm. "Leave me alone then. Stay away from me and my toy booth." Hugo rubbed his arm and stepped backward, accidentally crushing the wind-up mouse he had dropped. The old man shuddered at the sound of the breaking toy. Hugo picked up the broken pieces and placed them on the counter. "I can't leave without my notebook." "It's no longer your notebook. It's mine, and I will do with it what I want." The old man waved Hugo's box of matches in the air. "Perhaps I will burn it." "No!" The old man collected the contents of Hugo's pockets, including the notebook. He placed them in a handkerchief, tied it up, and covered it with his hands. "Then tell me about the drawings. Who did them?" Hugo said nothing. The old man slammed his fist on the counter, shaking all the toys. "Get out of here, you little thief!" "You're the thief!" Hugo yelled as he turned and ran off. The old man yelled something after him, but all Hugo heard was the clicking of his own shoes echoing off the station walls. All right, and then this chapter is called The Clocks. Hugo ran down the hallway and disappeared back inside the metal vent in the wall. He paused for a moment. The air was cool and damp. A few dim light a few dim light bulbs provided a tiny bit of illumination inside the dark passageways. So this is interesting. He's in the train station, but he's in these, as he describes them, dark passageways. It makes me think like this is where the people who work in the train station would go to fix things. These are clearly not areas of the train station where passengers would go. So that's interesting to me. A door. Hugo opened the door and let himself inside. Above the ceiling of the main waiting area was a cluster of secret apartments that had been built for people who ran the train station years ago. Most of them had long been abandoned. Only one was still in use. Some sunlight filtered through the dirty skylight. Hugo looked at the rows and rows of jars filled with pieces from all the toys he had stolen from the toy booth over the past few months. The jars sat on shelves made from scavenged planks he had found inside the walls of the station. Under his rickety bed lay a pile of Hugo's drawings. His deck of cards rested on a dusty trunk in the middle of the room. Nearby on a small table was a stack of envelopes, his uncle's uncashed paychecks accumulating week by week. That's interesting because if your parents get their paycheck for working all week long, typically one of the first things you do is you go either cash the check or you deposit it. You put that money in the bank. So it's odd to me that there are piles of his uncle's uncashed paychecks. So it's not like he has money just sitting there. They're kind of worthless unless you either cash them or put them in the bank. Hugo wiped his eyes and picked up his bucket of tools. He stuffed some more matches and candles into his pockets and set to work. Okay, now notice here that there is an extra space between these paragraphs. This is something authors do to signal to you that we have a little bit of time passing. Either time is passing or the setting is kind of changing within a chapter. So a lot of times when it's a new chapter, we kind of know like, okay, new setting, new time. But sometimes, the author really just started this chapter. It might seem odd to end the chapter already. So that's kind of a signal to you that time has passed or the setting is changing. As usual, Hugo headed first headed to the big glass clock on the roof because they were the hardest to reach. They were like huge round windows and looked out over the city, one facing north and one facing south. Hugo had to climb up a long dark staircase and slither through an opening in the ceiling at the top of a ladder to get inside them. During the day, his eyes always stung for a few moments from the flood of light through the glass. The motors and gears of these clocks were the biggest in the station, and Hugo was often afraid that his hand was going to get caught. In the corner of the room, attached by ropes, hung huge weights that kept the clocks running. He checked the time on the glass clocks against the time on his uncle's railroad watch, which he kept with his tools and wound diligently every morning. Then he took a moment to carefully look the whole mechanism over and added a few drops of oil to each gear shaft from the little oil can in his kit. Hugo's head tilted slightly to the side as he listened to the beat of the clock, waiting until he was sure the machine was running correctly. Once he had finished with the clocks on the roof, he climbed down the ladder and the long staircase. Back inside the dark passageways, he checked the other clocks in the station, all of which were made of brass and could be maintained from inside the walls. Hugo lit his candles to help him see and began with the clock that overlooked the ticket booths. This clock, like all the others, had weights too, but much smaller ones, which disappeared into the floor. Hugo attached a crank to the back of the clock and, using all his strength, turned it as far as it would go. So here he is working on the clocks. By the way, clocks in a train station would be very, very important because you have trains leaving at very precise times. So if I bought a ticket for a train that leaves at 10:36, if I'm looking at the clocks in the station, they better be correct, right? If they're a little bit fast or a little bit slow, I could miss my train. So clocks of all place in a train station would have to be maintained. And we're talking the 1930s. So these are not clocks that are, they're not digital clocks. They have to be maintained and kept up by someone. Hugo then made sure the gears and levers were moving accurately, and he checked that the time was correct on the miniature dial built into the back of the clock works. Next, he moved through the hidden passageways to the ring of clocks around the train platforms, and then to the backs of the smaller clocks that faced the interior offices, including the station inspectors. Looking through the numbers, Hugo could see the station inspector's desk, and in the corner of the office, the cage of a small jail cell that was waiting for any criminals caught in the station. Hugo had seen men and women locked up in there, and a few times had even seen boys no older than himself in the cell, their eyes red from crying. Eventually, these people were taken away, and Hugo never saw them again. From the offices, Hugo followed a long hidden tunnel to the back of the clock opposite the old man's toy booth. He wished he could avoid this clock, but he knew he couldn't skip any of them. Peering out through the numbers, Hugo spied the old man again, alone in his toy booth at the end of the hallway, looking through the pages of Hugo's notebook. Hugo wanted to scream out, but he didn't. He oiled the clocks and listened to it carefully. He could tell it wouldn't need to be wound for another day or two, so Hugo kept going until all 27 clocks in the station had been attended to just the way his uncle had taught him. Interesting place to stop. All right, I hope you enjoyed the first part of the book, and we will continue more tomorrow. Bye, guys.